Good morning. Happy Friday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. Okay, leading into the holiday weekend for those of you who celebrate, we're going to dig straight into today's Q&A. This is with Matt. Matt had a great question in regards to the progression of a narrow ISA as they move forward through space and what we're going to see. So we're going to see elements of anterior orientation, and we're going to see what eventually becomes what is often termed a swayback situation. And then how is that constructed and what does it actually represent? It gets misconstrued as a posterior tilting, if you will, of the pelvis, which is probably not accurate. It is a forward movement through space. And so we talk about how we see this progression and measures that you actually may see that will help you recognize the fact that anterior orientation persists as you move through space. We also have to consider some configuration elements of the axial skeleton itself. And so if we have a pelvis circumference that is larger than the thoracic circumference, we're going to have a much more significant downward force, which is going to take the center of gravity down and forward, which is going to predispose people more towards that sway back representation. So that was not discussed in this discussion, but I wanted to throw that out there for you as an element of consideration. For those of you who are looking for more information in regards to the configuration, please go to the YouTube channel. If you put configuration into the search blank there, you're going to find a couple of videos that are going to help give you some background on what we mean by configurations and their influence. Everybody have an outstanding holiday weekend. Podcast will be up on Sunday. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll see you next week. Mr. Hamilton.
Hey, Bill, how you going?
I am doing quite well, thank you.
Good. Merry Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas to you.
Hey, I have a question in respect to narrow ISAs, and you might need to speak to me like I'm a 5-year-old because I think I'm regressing as I get further into this rather than progressing. So we get a narrow ISA and we can see them present with, in their later stages, either a swayback or an anterior pelvic tilt, if we want to call it that, or orientation. What I'm trying to get through my head is the stages that they go through that lead them down one path or another, or the other, and at what point they sort of part ways, if you get what I mean. Which, like, I can see at the end of say a swayback position where we've got that, rectus abdominis pulling down really hard, the dorsal rostral compression pushing them forward up at the back, their pump handles down, their lower posterior compression. So we're seeing these signs, but what I'm lost in is how do they end up in the same starting position and end up in a different ending position? At what point does the change take place?
Which change are you making reference to, my friend?
So I'm making change in regards to the pelvic orientation. Like, are you there, Bill? Sorry, I lost you for a second.
I'm here.
What causes the pelvic orientation to move anteriorly as opposed to moving into a swayback posture? Because obviously you're not going to end up in a position with that pump handle being pumped down, pulled down as significantly in an anteriorly orientated pelvic position, because
why not?
Well, I would suggest that you're going in the opposite direction, aren't you?
Under what circumstance could I possibly move my pelvis into a posterior orientation and not fall backwards?
Under what circumstance could you not fall backwards?
Yeah, so they're moving forward through space, are they not?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so if I reach between your legs and I reach up behind you and I grab the back of your belt, okay?
Yeah.
I'm in the front and I'm reaching up underneath you. I grab the back of your belt and I pull it down and back. What direction are you going to go?
So you're standing in front of me, pulling from there.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to fall. I'm going to go backwards.
You're going to fall backwards.
Yeah.
Like I'm not pulling you. I'm not, you know, you're not moving forward under that circumstance. That's tipping the pelvis backwards, right? So
Yeah.
the pelvis doesn't tilt backwards under that circumstance. You're just sliding more forward, right? So the anterior orientation has already taken place. Like as soon as you start to get the sacrum, the base of the sacrum starts to get compressed, as soon as the DR starts to get compressed, you're going forward. That is an anterior, you are moving into an anterior orientation. Don't let the visual screw you up.
Well, it's definitely doing that.
Okay. So think about this for a second, Matt. So if you had a narrow ISA individual that was in a late propulsive strategy,
Yeah.
do you think they would have normal external rotation at the hip?
No, not
No.
anymore.
Okay, so my dead giveaway for anterior orientation is the loss of external rotation at the hip joint, because that's what happens when the pelvis anteriorly orients. You understand that, right?
Yeah.
No, I get. So there you go. So again, it's like when people see the visual representation of that pelvis moving forward in the narrow ISA, they go, oh, it's now tilting backwards. It's like, no, I just kept pushing the pelvis forward. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because again, it's the visual that throws people off, and then they make the incorrect assumptions but this is why, and again, you don't have to do table tests, but you need to understand what they mean, right? When I have the loss of external rotation at the hip, the only way that's going to happen is I have to move the pelvis into a position that would take that motion away, right? Which would be pushing it into the anterior orientation. Okay.
Yeah.
And this will be like, these are your narrow people that have to move their legs really, really far apart to squat.
Yeah.
Right. Because they got smushed from the front first, they got smushed from the back second. Right.
So would you say that then someone who's ended up in the swayback position is much further along as far as their compression's concerned?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I did hear
for sure.
Okay. All right. I'll think on that a bit more and try and figure it out.
Well, Matt, just start to look at the muscle activity that got you there, right? If you're in a late representation in either circumstance, it doesn't matter who you are, you have pressure against the sacral base that is pushing it forward. Yeah. That doesn't stop, right? It continues. You just start to add more compensatory strategy on top of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I get that part of it. I was just having difficulty figuring out, when I see people with those big, those posterior lumbar compression and that big curve of the spine, and then that kind of you visually look at that and go, oh well, that's they're in an anteriorly orientated position, but they're a narrow ISA relative to the swayback who's going the opposite, appears to be going in the opposite direction, but they're not really. They're just pushed slightly in a different. It's still pushed forward, but in a different manner, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, okay. Again, go back to your starting conditions, so you see where they came from, and then you deconstruct it, right? If they're in a late representation, that sacral base is getting pushed forward, my friend. It's like you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice.
Yeah. All right. I'll think on that. Thanks, Bill.
All right, man.